Hello and welcome to my session on developing your inland waterways instructor skills and knowledge. My name's Selby-Nicholls and I'm an inland waterways trainer. So let's have a little look at what we're going to cover. We're going to start off by looking at teaching aids. We're going to talk about who will benefit from using teaching aids within a training area, how and where to use teaching aids, and what makes a good teaching aid. Next, we're going to move on to spring lines. First of all, we're going to have a look at springing on, then we're going to look at springing off, and finally, we're going to talk about how, by using springing on and off, it can increase students' development and enjoyment. A picture is worth 1,000 words. Really cheesy. Possibly the cheesiest line I could come up with. But there's a reason why it's so well known, and it's simply because it's true. If you think about how you retain information, you're far more likely to remember things that you've seen rather than what you've heard. So why not capitalise on that and use it within our training to encourage learning? So who's going to benefit from these teaching aids? Well, we've got 4 different types of learners. We've got our visual learners. They learn from seeing their skill. We've got our auditory learners. They'll learn and take information from an explanation. Our readers and reflectors, they'll like to see other people doing the skill several times, possibly reading the book or letting it all sink in before they have a go. And then our kinestheticers, they're the guys that think that they can probably have a go straight off the bat. So our teaching aids are really focusing on these visual learners, and as you can see, on average, 65% of people are visual learners. So it's really important that our teaching caters for those learners. So our first group of people that are going to benefit are obviously our students. If we can deliver training in a way that all 4 types of learners are going to be able to understand, then we're giving every single student the best possibility and the same opportunity of learning a new skill. Myself, I'm very much a visual learner. If I can't see what the end goal is, I'm pretty much useless at having a go at it. So I have to see what it's going to look like. The second group of people that this is going to benefit is you, our instructors. So not only 65% of our learners are visual, but that also means that 65% of our instructors are visual learners as well. So whenever I'm explaining anything, it's a real good prompt to be able to pick out those key teaching points by having a model, for example, going through the process. It's sort of a prompt for me to be able to make sure that I'm picking out the key points and actually what I'm doing is correct. Where can we include teaching aids? When we're teaching a new manoeuvre, we should be following the EDIC model. E is for explain, D, demonstrate, I, imitate, C, correction, T for training, S for summary. So straight away during the explanation part of the EDIC model, we can start using these training aids. If we're explaining something, really think about how else we can make this visual for our students. Could we draw a picture? Could we have a model boat that's moving through a winding hole or up alongside a mooring? Could we have a model of a lock to show the gates, the sill, just so that we're allowing all of our students to be able to get a good base knowledge before they get their first chance at trying the skill? I really like to keep all of my training aids accessible for everyone that's on the course. I quite often will find during lunch students will come and get them, run through some manoeuvres. Maybe there was something they were a little bit unclear of. And actually for me as well, it's a really good way of seeing whether students need just a little bit more guidance, whether they're really sure of the skill or just not 100% sure of how things should be going. So during my explanation, or even during the correction, if I've referred back to the explanation, I quite often, my students will take take a model of a boat and go through that process again. And for me, that's really good because it means that I can check their understanding, and I know that they've learned, they've taken on board the key teaching points, so that when they come to have a go, we're at a much better chance of them having a successful attempt. What should yours look like? The things to remember: first of all, it needs to be as realistic and relevant as possible. So when I'm using model boats, I always try and make sure that they actually look like narrow boats or wide beams, or a boat that you would find on inland waterways. An appropriate size. I've got a variety of different models. I've got some bigger boats that I use for showing mooring lines, and then I've got some smaller ones that can fit in my pocket, and actually they're really good for being out and about and knowing that I've always got one on me, so that if I needed to reinforce some learning or do a quick explanation, I've always got one there. And most importantly, they need to not distract from learning. I've seen lots of different variations of teaching aids. I've seen people use rubber ducks. I always feel though that yes, it adds a bit of humour and makes it a bit memorable, but actually it's not true to what we're trying to learn, and actually it is distracting from the learning because we're too busy thinking about the rubber ducks floating down the canal. So some examples that I use. First of all, my larger models that I use in the first explanation of a manoeuvre. They're really clear and visible for the whole group to be able to easily see. And as you can see, I've got a dock side as well, so that I can run through mooring, we can look at the angle of the boat, and it's a really clear visual. I've also got some little bits of doweling at the bow, the stern and the centre line that I'm able to attach small bits of rope to really emphasise the stages that we go through when mooring up. Next up, my smaller models. These are always in my pocket. Whereas the bigger models are great for that first explanation, these smaller ones are really good for when I'm giving some corrections, some on-session feedback, or allowing my students to just go through the motions and really retain that manoeuvre in their mind. As you can see, quite a bit of a size difference. So here's some takeaways for you. First of all, if you don't already have some, you'll need to go and find yourself some models. Now, if you're crafty or good with DIY, you may enjoy making your own. I did, certainly. I knew that I could make them how I wanted and tailor them so that I knew that they were effective for all the manoeuvres that I was going to be teaching. If you want some pre-made boats, then the best place is going to be your canal visitor centre. They'll be able to sell you lots of little replicas at a fairly affordable price as well. If you're going to be drawing, then I do really recommend you practicing drawing boats, not only so that they look clear and are understandable for your students, but also that you can draw them in a timely manner so that you're not actually taking away any learning time from your students whilst you're making sure that that drawing is an absolute work of art. Once you've got your models, then it's just all about practice. Try going through some of the explanations for our main manoeuvres and making sure that your words through your explanation are matching up with where your boat is, so that then when you first come to deliver your training, that's already been practiced and put into place, and you know that everything's going to marry up. Okay, next step, spring lines. So you don't need bow thrusters to gracefully bring your boat alongside or to leave a mooring effortlessly. You just need to master the use of spring lines. So let's cover some terminology. The front line we've got is our bow line, coming from the front of the boat to the front of the dock, and the stern line, back of the boat to the back of the dock. But in the middle we've got some spring lines. Now, spring line is a line that's attached from the front of the boat to the middle of the dock, or the middle of the dock to the stern of the boat, but they could also be going from the centre of the boat to the back of the dock or to the front of the dock. We're going to have a little look at springing on first, and the technique that we're going to go through is springing on with the crew member. So first of all, we want to be approaching the mooring at about a 35-degree angle. Next, we want to stop the boat, and it's really important to emphasise transits at this point. And we want the bow to be just clear of the bank with a steppable distance for our crew. Where our crew member steps ashore with the bow line and places a turn around a bollard towards the centre of the boat, so that we've got an angle on that line. When the line is secure, give the signal to the helm to commence the next stage. The helm can then place the boat into forward gear, just into tick over. We don't need any more power than that to start with the tiller straight. Once the water flow over the rudder is established, then you can push the tiller towards the bank that you want to go towards. As the stern gets closer into the bank, start to straighten up your tiller. This will slow down the turn and it will ensure that you don't crash your boat into the bank. Once the boat is alongside, place the boat into neutral and signal to your crew that you're in neutral, and the helm can step ashore with the stern line and make fast. The crew can then move the bow line from that centre bollard or ring to a forward bollard or ring and make fast. Here's a video of how it should look.
Welcome to Willer in Training Boat Handling Tutorial Series. This series of videos is not a substitute for hands-on tuition, but will give you an introduction to the techniques used on a boat handling training course. In this video, we're going to look at putting a crew member off at the bow and springing the boat onto the mooring. Okay, so I've picked the mooring spot up ahead, and the method we're going to show here with springing on is very useful when it's a windy day and when the wind is blowing you off the mooring. You can see from the flag on the left today isn't windy, but we'll show you the process anyway. Now, as with normal coming alongside, I'm gradually bringing the bow over to the point where I want to be. But in this case, I'm going to stop fairly short of where I want to end up, so that I can put the crew member off with the bow line, and he's going to take the bow line through a suitable ring or bollard to the point where that ring or bollard will be about halfway down the length of the boat. The wind now, of course, if it was windy, would be pushing the bow out, and that's what I have to do, go back into forward gear and just bring it in a little bit firmer. Once he's safe, he steps off, finds a suitably placed ring, takes a line through the ring a couple of times so he's got a firm grip on it, and now he's got hold, I can put it back into forward gear and gradually bring the boat in. Now, using this spring line, the bow now can't go out anymore, so the whole boat in fact will now come alongside. And once the stern is close enough, I can step off then with the stern line. And there you have it, springing on to a mooring.
Now we're going to look at springing on single-handed. This is a really useful skill to develop your students to. Quite often your crew may be at a lock preparing it or closing a lock after you've been through, and you need to come into the mooring by yourselves. So the helm's going to bring the stern of the boat onto the bank. And the boat will probably be about 35 degrees again, but this time the bow of the boat will be away from the bank. And again, they want to bring the boat down to a stop using their transits. When the boat is stopped, the centre line, they can step off with the centre line and pop it around a bollard towards the stern of the boat and then step back on board with the centre line. With the tiller straight, they can put the engine into gear, again just into tick over to start with. If it was windy and the helm found that the boat wasn't moving into the bank, they could increase that throttle ever so slightly. Once the water flow is established over the rudder, Then push the tiller away from the bank. You may need to pay out a little bit of centre line to allow the stern to move away from the bank. Once the boat's parallel with the bank, then straighten up your tiller and the boat will now glide sideways into the bank. When you're alongside, engage neutral and step ashore with the centre line and the stern line and make the stern line fast. Taking the centre line with you, go to the bow, take the bow line and secure. Next, springing off. This technique can be carried out with crew or single-handed. If you're doing it single-handed, the helm will need to carry out the first couple of steps, but if you've got a crew, they can help you. First of all, ensure that you complete the usual pre-departure checks. Release the bow line, stow it away securely, and then untie the stern line, but ensure that you keep a turn on a bollard, and the bollard needs to be within the length of the boat. Keeping your tiller straight, place the engine in reverse, just in tick over, and then the bow should move away from the bank. Once clear of any moored boats in front of you or bridges or any other obstructions, place the engine in neutral and release the stern line. Ensure to stow it away securely and then move away from the bank as normal. Here's another video to show those steps.
So now we're going to use a technique called springing off, and we're going to use this to leave this moor in place so that we can carry on our trip down the canal. So Rach, if you can make your way up to the front, and if you can untie the bow line, coil it up and place it on board the boat and step on yourself. Once you've done that, nice clear thumbs up to myself. That tells me that you're happy and ready for me to do the next stage. Once done that, I'm then going to move the stern line from the back ring up to the ring in the middle of the boat, secure it on there, and then put the boat into reverse. That will allow the nose of the boat to swing away without moving forwards or backwards. Once the line of the boat is clear of the obstacle in front, I'll then put her into neutral, retrieve that line, stow her away safely on the boat, and then we can head off down the canal.
How and when can we include springing in a helmsman's course? These techniques can be introduced from the start of the course. Why not spring off as your first demo? It can be quite daunting for a student who's never driven a narrowboat before to feel that they're going to need to be able to be in charge of 18+ ton boat. By teaching our students these really simple, powerful techniques, we're really showing them that actually these heavy, long, big boats are really manageable, and even with a strong wind or any foreseen circumstances, actually our boat should never be out of control, and we can really easily bring them into a mooring or leave a mooring without any heavy heaving of lines or even getting out of breath. Springing on with crew can be your main method of mooring. I know it is mine. It allows a high success rate, allowing students to then confidently try more challenging techniques. And students can then be tasked with mooring single-handedly if all crew are busy operating a lock. It's a realistic situation on the canals. Here are my takeaways for springing. Practice these manoeuvres yourself if you're not already familiar with them, so that you feel you will be confident to give a clear and concise demonstration. Think about how you're going to explain these to your students and include them into your next course. Thank you very much for your time. I hope you enjoyed yourselves. See you soon.